Good afternoon and welcome everyone to NGLCC's Webinar Wednesday for Wednesday, May 13, 2020, Working from Home Time Mastery Tips presented by Joshua Skye. I'm NGLCC Senior Vice President Jonathan Lovitz, proud to be joined by my fellow SVP Sabrina Kent, and we're thrilled to welcome you all to another exciting installment of Webinar Wednesdays. We are elated to have Joshua presenting to us for all of you as he did with us at Team NGLCC and at conferences in the past. Josh has a long history of education and training with corporate environments, NGOs, and he'll tell you more about his long experience in the space as we get started. But I want to remind everyone that Q&A will be available throughout the program, and that will also take extensive questions at the end. Use the Q&A button at the top or bottom of your screen. Additionally, if you need any support or have any questions, reach out to us at webinars@nglcc.org and go to nglcc.org/webinars on our homepage to see all upcoming events and submit your own. We'd love to hear from you and share topics that you would like to present with the LGBT business community. So it's my pleasure to turn things over to my fellow SVP, Sabrina Kent, as we kick off this week's Webinar Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you so much to all of you who are tuning in from home. We are thrilled to have Josh Skye with us today for Working from Home Time Mastery Tips. Jonathan really gave the best introduction possible. We've been thrilled to work with Josh in a number of capacities at NGLCC, and we're proud to have him in the certified LGBTBE family. So as Jonathan said, please use the Q&A chat feature throughout. I'll be monitoring that as the program continues on, and we'll be live feeding those questions to Josh. So without any further ado, Josh, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you both. Let's go ahead and make sure that I share the screen here. It's telling me that I cannot share while the other participant is sharing. Something I need to do.
Floor is yours, Josh. Whenever you're ready, hit share screen.
But I'm getting a message that says you cannot start share screen while the other participant is sharing.
Again, right now, just turned all that on.
Okay. Do you see my slide?
Not yet. Give it just a second.
Okay.
These technical difficulties are the magic of working from home, folks.
Exactly. All right. Bear with us, everybody. We are almost there. Josh, we're trying sharing share screen one more time, if you would. It looks like everything's good on our end. There we are.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right, take it away, sir.
All right. So as Jonathan and Sabrina said, I've been a long-term connected with NGLCC. I was first certified in 2007 as an LGBTBE. I am what's called a human resource development consultant. So I do training, facilitation, and coaching. And this coming summer, I will be in business for 21 years. I am based in Southwest Florida, in a town called Estero, between Fort Myers and Naples on the Gulf Coast. And in addition to a master's degree in education, I also have two senior professional credentials in the field of human resources. And that's something that I'm very proud of, and something that I infiltrate into a lot of the work that I do. I got the idea for doing this because when they first posted the concept of these webinars on Wednesdays for fellow business enterprises, I didn't see anything along these lines. And coming from the area that I come from in HR, specifically as an outside consultant, I figured that, you know, many people may already be used to working from home. Many are not, and there may be some challenges and new challenges for both audiences. And so I thought that maybe, you know, bringing some content, some conversation to the forefront might be helpful to folks in the audience. So my plan is to go through a series of slides, probably for the first 30, 35 minutes of this, with some, you know, commentary on each one. And then, as Jonathan and Sabrina told us, you know, feel free to throw in questions at any time into the chat box, and they will share them with me at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, as well as anything else that comes in before the end of the hour. So with that, I will move along to the first slide here. A couple of slides on statistics. Now, this is a survey that was done around mid-March, so note the dates is nearly 2 months ago. I mean, in my family, we kind of say March 13th, that Friday was the day that it really seemed to have started for us. So being May 13th today, it's 2 months into this. And this was a survey done by 550, you know, US employers. It's not a huge sample, and it was done early on, but a couple of things to notice is that in the first graph there, you know, 2/3 of employers were taking steps to start allowing people to work from home who generally would not be doing so. About 1/3 were actively encouraging all employees to work from home. So a lot of these numbers have probably shifted in the last 2 months, especially as we go further into adapting to, you know, the everyday information on COVID-19 and how we need to deal with this crisis. But just thought that this might be valuable to look at as a start. This particular survey was done actually last year, and it's interesting to see what the biggest struggles folks have when they are working remotely. So let's take a look at a couple of the first ones, and obviously these would also play into the current situation. Being able to unplug after work, a sense of loneliness, collaborating and or communicating with others, dealing with distractions, functioning when you have to work with people in different time zones, and staying motivated. I'm going to skip over the last three there, but you know, these are issues that people may face in the workplace in general, but specifically when they're working remotely for whatever reason, either because the job requires it, or it's a function of what they're doing, or they just have that privilege, and yet these issues may come up. And I think that these percentages would probably be even higher now, based on the folks that I'm working with, because a lot of my coaching clients are all working remotely, and these are things that they are contending with and sharing in the coaching sessions. Now, as I said, I've been working from home, been working for myself for 21 years, and have always been working from home unless I am locally interacting with clients, prospects, attending professional meetings, or on the road delivering training or other facilitation of programs. As Jonathan said, just recently did a program on this very topic with Team NGLCC in early March, just before all the travel seemed to have changed and before everyone from Team NGLCC started working from home as well. So I myself have been used to this, and there might be many on the call that on the webinar that have had this experience. They were working from home like me. It was always my plan. I never really wanted to have an office for the work that I do. I have an assistant that works with me. She generally comes in for 1 or 2 days a week, but now we also have moved her towards working remotely. It brings in new challenges for both of us, but at the same time, we're working through it. You know, we've always tried to be flexible with one another and try to work through the kinks that we have going on. But for many of you, that may still be the case. You were working from home. And for some of you, this may be a new normal that you're adjusting to. So my intention, again, is to go through some highlights on various topics related to time mastery, knowing that this is a really, really large topic. There's a lot that can be covered here, often in a half day or a full day program. And we're trying to cover some of the basics in this just 1 hour. So on the next slide here, we have 12 different categories or facets of what's included in time mastery. Take a moment to look at these bullet points. And notice too that many of them are interconnected. Now, I'm going to leave these on the screen. They show up in every subsequent slide, pretty much, so you'll always have a reference to them, so we can keep going. To start off with, creating a realistic to-do list, and I put realistic in bold here. This is a skill that's very valuable if you're working, regularly in your office, in an office space. And there's some great research that's been done on this topic. But even more so, this is going to be valuable for folks working now, trying to keep some structure to their day. And that's what I hear a lot of people have issues with because of the fact that they're working from home. So a realistic to-do list is the fact that you can actually get these things done over the course of the day. And as I said, research has been done to show that our mind is like an iceberg where the conscious part of our mind is above the water, but our subconscious mind is below the water. And that really is the biggest part of our brain. That's the part of our brain that works all the time. It's the thing that pops little ideas into your head. It's, we think of things when we're walking, when we're driving, even when we're involved in other projects or in conversations, because that's a part of our brain that never shuts off. And so the research shows that if you take some time at the end of the workday and 10-15 minutes, decide no more phone calls, no more emails. Again, this can work when you're working normally, but certainly if you're working from home because of the COVID-19 crisis. So you want to be able to spend some time kind of putting those things into your subconscious mind and letting them stay there and be relaxed. In other words, take a look at your list from the day, look at what you've accomplished, which is always great to have a sense of, there were results that were achieved. I got a lot of things done. We all have days when we sometimes look at the end of our day and say, what did I accomplish today and why didn't I? And so this gives us a little bit of structure to follow that. Also, it puts it at rest for us so that when we transition to our personal time in the real world, that might involve a commute, but for some folks it may not. But now, for most of us, there is no commute. So, the transition time, which we'll come to later, is really, really brief. And so it's kind of like we want to just put this aside, relax with it, and set it down, thinking about like, what do we want to tackle in the morning? And what a lot of people don't realize is you can't take shortcuts here. You really have to do this at the end of your day and then look at it again in the morning. Because if you don't put it down at the end of your day, whether you do it on paper and pencil, or you put it on some sort of a electronic document or keep track of it somewhere electronically, whatever system works for you, I always feel is the best. There's no one size fits all. It has to be something that you will use and that will be valuable to you. But again, if you skip that part and say, hey, I don't have time for that, and I'll just deal with this in the morning, these are the things that make your mind keep going. These are the things that might even have you toss and turn at night. And it's not that it's anything really, significant. It's the fact that you need to be able to keep it and settle it somewhere secure. And again, research has been done to the fact that people are much more successful, much less stressed when they compartmentalize things that way and then move into their personal space. It's also valuable to do this at the end of your work week in preparation for the week ahead to see what you're doing. And actually, as I was sitting here and getting ready for this webinar to start, I went ahead and started looking at my own goals and my own to-do lists, refreshing what I've done, taking things off and creating a new sheet that keeps me focused. So back to focus again, there's a great quote from Benjamin Franklin that said, if we fail to plan, we can definitely plan to fail. Again, if we fail to plan, we can plan to fail. And a corollary to that is another one that I've picked up along the way. If we learn to plan, we can plan to learn. Again, if we learn to plan, we can plan to learn. It will give us that focus. It'll give us that analysis, one of those words that's highlighted down there in red. Hold yourself accountable. you know, looking at your results, making you feel like you've spent your time effectively, you've understood when things coming into play might be time wasters, and phone calls and meetings and emails are always a part of that category, but it's even more of a challenge now to manage working from home. Some people find it easier to work from home because they feel that many of those distractions in the office are gone. So it's truly a matter of your own style and what you're comfortable with. And just being busy doesn't necessarily guarantee that you have results. Another tip is to maintain regular hours. Now, I of all people shouldn't be even stating this because I really don't have any regular hours. I work from home, as I said before. You know, typical hours are 8 to 5. Sometimes I find myself starting earlier than 8 and sometimes ending later than 5. Again, because I have clients in Europe. Right now, I have a coaching client in the UK, but I've had others before in different time zones going forward. And I also have work in folks dealing in Central, Mountain, or possibly even Pacific time. So how I have to adjust my day is going to be dependent on what's on the schedule. But maintaining regular hours when you are working from home, even if it's the traditional 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever is required for your work, does require you to do some planning and scheduling. So try to keep some structure in that way as well and allow yourself to be more effective. Now, for me, it's never been the case because I do fit in personal things during the course of the day. And so I feel like I balance those out, that if I'm going to do something for myself personally, then I need to be sure that I'm making up the time and getting work done elsewhere. Speaking of breaks, you know, that's very, very important now. We all do them when we're in the workplace. We get up, we go for coffee, we go for water, we go for a snack. Some people smoke, they go outside and have a cigarette. Not that I'm condoning that. But, you know, sometimes people just go for a walk to refresh their mind, to clear their mind. Certainly something you should be doing now as well, especially if you're working from home. And if that home environment is a little more crowded with other people and possibly animals, it might be advantageous. But at least do get up a little bit, move around. It's very important for your, you know, blood circulation. There may be opportunities to do this more often in the office if you are traditionally working in an office, a work office. But at home, you may not have those, and you must make sure that you do them. And of course, make personal calls. You know, if there's appointments you have to make or personal calls that you need to address, just make those breaks come in regular times so that they're not, you know, interrupting your day throughout the day. And again, if you can get those things done and balance them out with the work obligations, it will improve your attitude. Take a lunch break, you know. Depending on whether or not you are at home with other folks right now, you might decide that you can do a lunch break together so that everybody's kind of having communal time. Everyone's working, you know, pretty much the same. And it's also a little bit of a intervention and a break in a positive way from the work flow. Again, it's not my normal because I'm generally by myself, but now my spouse is home. He's working on a rotation where he goes into his office every third day because there are only 3 people in his office and they're trying to minimize risk. So each day one person goes in. At the end of the day, they clean down the common areas, and the next day the next person is by themselves. So we've had to adapt, specifically me, to the fact that he's here 2 out of every 3 days, which is a big change. But it was a challenge at first, and I'll bring that up on some subsequent slides as to what we did face and how we handle it. But for yourself, whether you're by yourself or with others, you know, try to take that lunch break just the way you would at the office. At the office, you might sit with other colleagues. Here, you might sit with some family members. Some of you may have children at home, spouse, significant other, whatever that is, and try to just take a formalized, doesn't have to be a full hour, but something that kind of breaks up your day from the work and the projects you're doing. Set boundaries. Okay, boundaries here relate to time and space. There are others possibly around you, adults, children who are not in school right now, who also may need your attention because they're not in school, depending on the age level and abilities. And of course, pets. You know, most people have their homes and don't really have a designated space in their homes, especially people living in large cities, in smaller homes or apartments. They don't have that space. It wasn't intended for that. But now, of course, for those of us who need to do this, we have to create that space. And that space is usually a den, a dining room table, a kitchen table, maybe an outside space if the weather's warm enough and you can do it. But overall, it's about figuring out what those boundaries will be. And if you have more than one person at home at the same time, this can be a challenge as well because you're all, trying to get some space in the same limited amount of space that you have internally. As I said before, my spouse is now working from home every third day, and it was very apparent to me that this would be a little bit of a challenge specifically for me early on. And part of the challenge for him was that he did not have remote access right away. That took a little bit of time. They were working on a server issue, and until they fixed that, and some of their accounting software, they were not able to get him the remote access. So his work on the days that he was home, which again was 2 out of every 3 work days, was basically through email on his phone, making phone calls from his cell phone, but not really being as productive as he could be if he were at the office. And we're very fortunate. Again, we live in Florida. We live in a suburban type of area. We have a very large home, and it's just the 2 of us. There are no children, there are no pets. And the way our home is set up is that my office, which is technically the den in the house, is at the front of the house. We designed the house that way. Sitting here facing the street, I get to see deliveries, people walking by, feeling connected to the outside world. His office is a home office that we changed from a bedroom, a guest bedroom. We have other guest bedrooms, and we didn't need this one. So we turned that home office. But he's never used it that way before. So all of a sudden, I found at the very beginning that he was sitting in the family room out in the main middle part of the house, speaking on his cell phone, which of course people speak more loudly. And as soon as he was done with that first call that irritated me, I had to go over to him and explain, I can hear everything. I'm not used to you being around, so why don't you use your workspace? And let's have a rule that when we're on the phone or plan to be on the phone, we close our office doors. And this has worked very well because right now I'm sitting in my office with the 2 doors closed. And he knows that I'm engaged in something, as would be the reverse. But more importantly, it's giving us that boundary and the ground rules about how to function. Because if we want to talk to each other, we can during the day, but this also lets us know, about how to minimize interruptions. And it's worked really well. And of course, now he's got the remote access, so he's able to do things. So I hope this gives you some ideas on things that you could possibly do. But you do have to establish those at the onset. Of course, there's a lot of technology, headphones that sometimes people use in the office or earbuds, to tune out other work or other conversations going on around them. You still might need that at home. There's all kinds of technology that allow us to connect visually, and of course, besides phones, a lot of things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams that are allowing people to engage as best as they can by not being in the same physical space. But one of the key points I want to make here is that we really have to be sure that we are using this effectively. And some of the feedback I've gotten from some of my coaching clients is that they're home with a child or 2, and they find that some of their colleagues who may also be home and may be alone, don't have children, don't necessarily have any pets, specifically dogs to walk, are seeming to be engaging or trying to engage with them a little bit more often than they would in the workplace, setting up more meetings. And part of that may be that those folks are feeling maybe a little bit more lonely, or they're feeling like they're not getting enough done. So they set up meetings that some of my clients would say, I'm not sure why I was in that meeting. It wasn't a good use of my time. And if I was at the work office, I probably wouldn't have accepted it. So these are some of the challenges that people could face with technology. We really have to minimize that. Getting all kinds of updates of news, even in the general world, that we can get easily on our phones and other technology, can obviously be a big distraction, an interruption, and lead to procrastination. You know, the early days of the virus with all the updates and all the changes and all the new information, and, you know, states and municipalities, you know, enforcing different kinds of, you know, lockdowns and shelter at home, and you know, things like that early on was, you know, it's important for us to know. But by now, people should be very familiar with what's going on. And, you know, it's not great news. There are people out there that are getting infected with something that's very contagious, and people don't know exactly how it's being spread. People can be asymptomatic, which is also dangerous. And obviously, a lot of people are dying from this, which is also bringing on other kinds of emotional and tangential issues relating to people's general health. But, you know, the recommendation here is to minimize those updates. Try not to get those things coming into you and shooting out at you all day long, because it's definitely going to be a distractor for your ability to manage your time. Now, in the workplace, you have opportunities to socialize with colleagues. You know, you have ways to just get up and walk over to someone, to their cubicle, to their office, meet them in a break room, find a space, you know, a common space that a lot of offices have for people connecting, not necessarily socializing in a, you know, personal way, but just connecting on a personal level to enhance the relationships that you have at work. I have a particular a client right now. I'm coaching the executive director of a very small nonprofit agency, and she's got a very small team. Everyone's working from home, no one's in the office. And what they're doing is on Tuesday, they're having a team meeting to discuss all the business things that need to require action, information being shared in all directions amongst the small group. But on Thursdays, they have another team time, and that's all personal. They're talking about what's going on in their lives, they're connecting, and really making an effort to be connected that way in their relationships. But they're keeping it separate, as you can see. On Tuesdays is the work time, and on Thursdays is the personal time. Throughout the rest of the week, you know, different people are engaging with each other, one-on-one, separately, small groups. But for the most part, this is when the entire team comes together. So trying to be creative and coming up with new ideas is always a good thing. Getting dressed. Hey, nobody needs to see me. What should I do? You know, that's up to you. You know, some people don't feel like they can properly work unless they start their day the way they normally would when they're going to the office. And they want to do their regular routine, shower, for men shave, women put on makeup, you know, whatever is comfortable for you. And or men put on makeup, or women shave, whatever it is. But getting dressed and feeling like, you know, you're going to your workplace, that may be an important part of how you shape your attitude. You know, it's a personal choice, and it could definitely have an effect on you.
Joshua, as we're at the bottom of the hour, we're just going to pause for one moment to welcome everyone who's new. We have a lot of new folks who joined after we began, and just want to say welcome to everyone to Webinar Wednesdays at the NGLCC. A reminder to use the Q&A button to ask questions of our fantastic presenter, Joshua Skye. We'll get to those at the end of the program, but I also think Sabrina might have one right now, if we could throw that in.
Yeah, Josh, thanks so much for this presentation. This is really great as we're all managing and juggling what it means to work from home right now. One question I have, and something I've heard a lot just from my team and from others outside of NGLCC, is how do you end your workday, right? How do I close out that space and make sure that I have a dedicated time for myself after a busy day at the office, so to speak? So I know for me, my partner jokes that I close up the laptop and I stow it away for the evening and put the desk away and all of that jazz until I come back the next morning. But what advice do you have for folks that might be having difficulty separating that work time from personal time?
Well, the question couldn't be any more timely because that was the slide I was going into next. How do we transition into and out of work? A lot of folks have been challenged with the fact that they're used to a commute, right? So in that commute, whether it's mass transit, whether it's driving in their car, there's, listening to the radio, listening to news updates, talk radio, maybe an audio book. So what can you do, to transition from, as you said, sitting in front of their computer, their laptop, shutting it down. It might be on the kitchen table, the very place where they're about to prepare dinner. But, one of the things I would recommend for some folks, especially now that the weather is getting warmer as we move, through spring and towards summer, especially up north, is that you walk to and from work. Yeah, walk to and from work. What do I mean by that? Well, do your morning routine, have your breakfast, whatever else you do, and then literally walk out the door. Go for a walk, even if it's only 15 minutes in your neighborhood, and then come back in and then open up your workspace. Go through your day, and at the end of your day, do the same thing. Shut down that workspace, go out the door, take another walk for 10 or 15 minutes, and give yourself that transition. I know it might sound a little bit silly, but that gives us an opportunity to break apart, to clear our mind a little bit, to breathe some fresh air because we're so locked up indoors all day long. And then we're able to go into our personal time. What you don't want to do, of course, at the end of the day, to answer your question, Sabrina, is like leave that laptop open on the table. I mean, literally put it away. So when you come back in, it's gone. It's out of sight, and it will come back out again the next workday. So that's a great question. And like I said, the timing couldn't have been any better. We just
That's
have
amazing. And we're sorry to interrupt, but we're seeing some responses come in as well. You can commute by walking around the block. You can walk clockwise to work and counterclockwise home. And then just a note for Jonathan, I think the chat feature for our attendees might be disabled. So if we can get that back live, and back to you, Josh.
Thank you. And I actually just have a couple of more slides, really. So we are going to be ready to take lots of questions from members of the audience. This next one is that you should not hesitate to ask for what you need. You may need this from colleagues. You may need this from family members. You may need this from, vendors, suppliers. Don't be afraid to. I mean, these are very, very challenging times that we're dealing with right now. And people are not necessarily going to know what you need. You've lost the visual to some extent, unless you're using technology. But even there, it might be for a short time. It's not the same as seeing someone frustrated or dealing with challenges when we can see their faces on a regular basis. So really do think about this, because this is the kind of thing that could hold you back from moving forward and definitely have an impact on your attitude. And stay positive, whatever that means for you, whether it's listening to motivational media, as part of your workday. Remember I said earlier, it's advantageous to take a break. And maybe that's the kind of thing you do. You say, okay, I'll work until 10, 15, 10:30. I'll take a break. I'll read or listen to something motivational, and then I'll shut that off and go right back to, the next project or task that I was working on. It's almost like you're taking a coffee break with yourself, but always in the interest of trying to stay positive. What I don't want to see you doing, what I don't recommend, is that thing about, pulling in the news, which is generally, kind of negative. So to keep your morale going, if exercising or movement or taking a walk at that point will also help you, so be it, And lastly, accept yourself. There's a lot going on here. And this is not normal. We don't live this way. And it's not just the way we're working, it's also the world we're living in right now. There are restrictions out there. There are challenges that many of us are facing. When you're coping with other people in your home, somebody else might have lost their job. I mean, we know unemployment, numbers are quite high. And of course, they don't always represent everything because in addition, we've got folks that don't get counted in those unemployment rates. So most likely those numbers are even higher than that. But something else I want to point out about this is understanding that there is a lot of loss going on right now. And I just recently had a couple of, a series of blog entries on my website relating to grief. The fact that we go through the various stages of grief when there is a loss. And the first one was about the fact that people may have been through some sort of denial. And I think some people may still be in some sort of denial about how to cope with this and how to function. And then we move through various stages, 5 stages of grief as defined by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So if you're interested in looking, feel free to look at the blog entries that we have in archive. But it's really very valuable for us to recognize that we must accept ourselves. And I myself personally have been going through this also. I have my moments, throughout the day, throughout the week sometimes, where I'm also struggling with this. I mean, there are things not to look forward to. I mean, all my vacations for this year have been canceled. I don't know when I'll be traveling for any purpose in the near future. I'm not getting together with friends, although I'm hoping that will start to happen again. So again, understand, accept that in yourself. And new habits, the slide says that it could take us between 3 days or 3 weeks in order to bring new habits to change. So we have to first identify what the old one was, look at what the new one is, make sure that we're moving forward purposefully, never deviate from what we've started, and finally, be sure to ask for help. So with that, I'm going to bring the content of this part to an end and bring us back to the original slide. And Sabrina, Jonathan, be very happy to take on more questions that have been coming in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh, for that deeply informative webinar and program. We're really excited about all of this new information, excited to take this home, where I'm already at, take this back to my team as well. But Jimmy's asking, how do you turn off the creative brain? Sometimes I can't stop working because now I have the time to create and all I want to do is create all day long.
I had this very issue with a client last week, and and she generally has some issues with that. She's working on one thing and another great idea pops into her mind. So here was a suggestion I gave her. I said, have something in front of you, and it might be, again, as simple as paper and pen or a notebook or something, and jot those things down as they pop into your head. It's a very similar approach to what I said before about the to-do list. In other words, write it down, secure it someplace, and then leave it aside. This will allow you to then stay focused on what you're working on in the moment and then deal with other things as needed. I hope that is helpful to you, Sabrina, and to Jimmy, whoever asked the question.
Joshua, that's a great point. I'll chime in to say that's exactly how I'm making it work. My husband works on the other side of my home office door, and we both want, we're done with the end of the day. We've made dinner. We're both sitting around thinking, well, if we're on the couch watching mindless TV, we could answer a few more emails or whatever. And we have resorted to making sure we both have legal pads on the coffee table to jot down that idea to get back to at 9 a.m. when the workday starts the next day, so it doesn't follow us all day.
Glad to hear you're already doing that. Good for you, Jonathan.
Great advice that we got from you, so I appreciate that. Sabrina, do we have more questions in the queue?
We do. So Steve Adkins, hi Steve, great to have you with us, says, I think a lot of us are sitting in a lot of professional development webinars, creating our own virtual chamber programming and managing and attending team meetings. This creates a lot of calendar juggling and a lack of focus on self. I guess the real question is, how do you create balance when there are so many demands on one's time? I suppose that's the goal of this conversation.
Wow, that's a pretty good one. Hi, Steve. I know Steve also from Miami. Yeah, I mean, but how is that very different than when we're working under normal
Mhm.
conditions? We get bombarded by so much all the time in this world of, easy technology, easy communication. It's all the more so, and it's basically prioritization. I mean, one of those 12 categories that was on there was prioritization. That brings me to a point that I've made with some of my clients as well. In this time period, there may be great demands from your supervisor, from your employer, from your vendors, from anyone else that you're interacting with. And the reality is, we can't always accomplish everything. We can't work at 100% as we used to. We have to recognize that. And so, if that's the case, you have to have a conversation and decide which of the things you're going to work on and which of the things that are going to be put to the wayside, to the back burner, because if we try to do all of that, we're just going to stress ourselves out immensely. So prioritization, I would say, Steve, is the key there. Analyzing what you have going on and prioritizing the importance and value of those efforts.
Joshua, I just got one that was sent actually over email. Someone sent to me instead of the webinar's email, so I want to make sure it gets added to the queue here. Someone was asking about when your team members who may have been at a different place of productivity and time management when working in person have suddenly taken a bit of a slump because the COVID situation, or just this new work-life balance is proving harder for them than maybe some other team members. Is it best to work on things one-on-one and individualize how teams function, or is it better to come up with a system-wide, team-wide approach where everyone's checking in at certain times? How do you balance sort of the needs of the many and the needs of the one?
Yeah, I think there's no one answer to that. I like that second one about, trying to bring people together in a team effort and finding ways to support one another. Again, if you had folks that were not really, effective or producing before this all happened, that's a whole other issue. And obviously that's a conversation for somebody with their supervisor or team leader. But, if that's not the norm, and you just know this is a colleague of yours that is not at the same level they were before, you might want to check in and say, what's going on for you? How can I help you? How can we help each other? I think that would be a way to go.
Great. Sabrina, what's going on with you? How can I help you? How can we get through this together?
Well, if you could run to the store and sanitize me a carton of beer, that would be great. A carton of beer. So Harvey says, when I work with a remote team or even with clients, I have connected my computer to a cloud storage. This way, whatever is saved on my computer automatically is saved in my cloud. My team can then access universal files and save me interruption time to first send a file that they can have access to. Also, larger files can be sent to clients with a URL without choking your email with an attachment. I use box.com as I find it more intuitive and affordable than Dropbox. That's great, Harvey. And at NGLCC, we have our own cloud storage as well. We also utilize WeTransfer for those big files. Awesome tip. Another person says, Jason Mamaclay, Fuzzy Logic Escape Room in Downers Grove, Illinois. Josh, you mentioned many are in a state of shock and grief, and I think that your blog is a great resource I'm excited to thumb through. Are there any quick tips you can share for now to cover on how to embrace the grieving process, which includes anger and depression, so that we can come out stronger? Great question.
Well, I think the realization, first of all, that that's even going on, because, I chose to offer this webinar today because I didn't see it as an offering from some of my colleagues. And I said, well, people are talking about some other really great, valuable things on these Wednesday webinars, but not having seen one like this, I said, this might be something of value. So I put it out there. And of course, Team NGLCC knows that I've just done some work with them on this. So it was very timely. But, there's a lot of stuff coming out in the HR world about, the mental health that's going on. The very thing I was mentioning before, that, there has to be some negotiation about the fact, like, for instance, I've got a coaching client. She's here in Florida as well. She is married, to a man with one little daughter who's 7 years old. The husband has a job that is essential, with local county officials. He cannot work from home due to the nature of what he does. He flies helicopters and he's also a mechanic. So you can't do that in your kitchen or your living room. So she finds herself now a person who used to work 2 days a week from home, now works 5 days a week from home with a 7-year-old who needs to be engaged in her own schoolwork and also needs attention throughout the day. And she's finding it really, really challenging to stay on task, to stay motivated. And one of the things I recommend is that she have a conversation with her supervisor about, what do you want me to work on as a top priority, or prioritize with me, so that I can then focus on what's truly most important for the business.
Anyone else have any final questions for Josh? Jonathan, anything coming through via email?
No, we are caught up, and it looks like we're caught up in the Q&A box. So, Joshua, we want to thank you again for giving your time and enthusiasm here. I'm going to take back over the screen.
We actually,
oh, wait,
sorry to interrupt. Any books that you recommend? Natalie's asking.
Oh, for me? Oh,
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a very simple one that a lot of people are probably familiar with. And so if you remember it from the past, take it out, pull it out, dust it off. And that's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I often refer to this. There's a matrix in there with 4 quadrants, and it really talks about urgent and important, and that not everything that's urgent is important, vice versa. There are a lot of things that we do that are time wasters, and we really have to see where we spend our time. So again, for those of you, like I have a relatively new, younger coaching client who's in his 30s. He'd never heard of it before, so it was great for him to see it. But for those of us who've been around longer and are familiar with the 7 Habits books, it's a great resource to go back in. It's really simple, easy read, highly recommended.
That's awesome, Josh. And one that I recently read in 2 days, and it's sort of a holistic leadership book, but it covers many of these topics, as well as adapting through personal grief and organizational change and so forth. It's called Mission Driven Leadership, and it's actually written by Mark Bertolini, who is the former CEO and chairman of Aetna and actually sits on our board. It's another easy read, and as I said, I read it in about 2 days, not just a few months ago when we saw you back in DC before this all started. So I'd strongly encourage folks to order that book and give it a read, because it helps at all levels. Andy's saying Getting Things Done by David Allen is another good resource. Thank you, Andy. And Harvey's saying, thank you so much for this very helpful presentation, and offered new suggestions that hadn't been tried before. So Josh, thank you again so much. Jonathan, we'll turn it to you to take back over.
Wonderful. I am attempting to share my screen back. Give me a second here, everybody. But Josh, we thank you again so much for joining us today. As always, you are a brilliant presenter and have done so much for all of us at Team NGLCC, and want to take the time to invite everyone here to join us on Friday. If you like this, you're going to love what's coming up. Sip and Pitch Fridays, our chance to hear the best and brightest LGBTBEs, chamber leaders, ERG members pitch great ideas to get feedback from corporate coaches, is coming up on Friday from 3 to 5. Open to all. Come learn. You get just as much out of it observing great pitches as you do presenting yourself. And then stick around from 5 to 6 p.m. for community and conversation. We're calling it our family reunion. It's a chance to pour a drink, chat with friends, get your mind off the situation at hand, and let's talk about how we can help each other as friends, as colleagues, as a community, as business people. This program took off. We had it several weeks ago. It was such a hit. It has now moved to twice monthly, and we are bursting at the seams with attendees. So encourage you to go to the NGLCC homepage, nglcc.org, find the Sip and Pitch tab, and register for this week. We'd love to have you with us.
You'll also see that I shared that link down below, along with the link for our upcoming webinar programs. Remember, we do this every single week. Next week, we have 5 video marketing tips for businesses during COVID-19 by Trevor Rapley. Any questions for us? You want to see a recap? That'll be on the nglcc.org/webinars page. Questions, though, reach out to us at webinars@nglcc.org. We hope to see you submit a presentation for consideration, as well as joining us for our Sip and Pitch program. Jonathan, anything else?
Pride is around the corner. For any of you planning big Pride events, don't forget that the LGBT business community is your solution for moving Pride inside. We have dozens of corporate partners, government agencies, and even some of the big Pride presenters around the country coming to us and using LGBT-owned vendors to print t-shirts to mail to constituents, order food and beverage, hire DJs, put on a virtual presentation like this using one of our LGBT certified businesses that does that. So don't let the current situation cancel your Pride plans. Let the NGLCC and our network help you make it a great one. So once again, our big thanks to Joshua Skye for a great presentation today. Sabrina, thanks as always for helping organize a wonderful webinar Wednesday. And we'll see everyone on this call at Sip and Pitch Friday.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Josh.
Bye-bye.